Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, meet Carson Arthur and hear about his journey from a media personality to an independent small retailer, launching Carson's Garden and Market in Prince Edward County. Carson shares his product sourcing strategies and challenges, advice for his fellow indie retailers, SMB growth strategies for governments, and plans for an exciting future. Let's listen in now. Carson, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to be here. It feels weird to be on this end of the microphone, though.
Yes, we're going to talk about that. You spent a whole bunch of lifetime on the other side of the microphone. And you know what's funny? You and I met in person a couple of weeks ago. I was in your wonderful store in Prince Edward County, and we bought some great stuff, my wife and I, and we started talking. And I overheard you say a name of someone that I knew very well, and I'm like, could that be the same guy? It feels like you and I have been circling around each other for like a decade, but never meeting. So I'm really glad we met, and I'm thrilled you could join me on the mic.
I was going to use the same analogy, but I was going to say we were circling the bowl, which is, never got flushed at the same time. But yes, it is true. We did connect. Yeah. And thanks for coming into the store. I mean, it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. So to have somebody with your background come in and give advice, hugely important.
Well, I think what I'd love to talk about as we kind of meander through our time together is I want to learn more about you. I think the audience, you're an interesting cat, and you do interesting things, and you bring an interesting context to retail, and then the retail itself. But first of all, where am I finding you today? Are you in the store today? And use that as your jumping off point. Tell us about where you are and who the heck are you, and what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm not in the store. I'm in the office. To be honest with you, as little time in the store as possible is my goal all these days, because I'm a TV personality. I've been behind the camera for about 25 years now. We were doing the math. And I think my first series
started when you were 5, I think, by the looks of you, because you're a handsome fellow. You're a young-looking fellow. There you go.
Thank you. Well preserved. I blame the county air for that. No, it's 25 years since my first TV show. So wow. It's been a haul. Yeah, you don't often hear lifers in the TV industry, but I'm thankful to have gotten a career out of it. Yeah.
And tell us about the composition of that career. So I know it a little bit. In fact, you and I think crossed paths again, not in person at the shopping channel. You were doing some repping for some stuff, but talk about what you mean when you're on television and that's how you spend a fair bit of your time. What do you mean by that?
Sure. Well, I'll rewind a little bit. So prior to television, I worked for Procter Gamble, and I was one of those eager beavers who started in the mailroom and worked my way up to launching brands in Canada that had already been successful in the U.S. So I helped bring in Febreze and Iams and Crest White Strips, and a lot of the ones that we rely on today, I brought them into Canada. Which was really cool, but it wasn't my dream. And when Procter & Gamble downsized right around 9/11, I decided to take that opportunity to kind of refocus on what I wanted to do. So I decided to go back to school, and I went back to school for landscape design.
And that's a bit of a hold on a sec. That's a bit of a that's not the next thing I think I said customers. I don't think that's the next thing the listeners were expecting. What pivoted you from packaged goods and Febreze to landscape design?
Anybody who's worked with packaged goods knows what office life is like. And I decided, you know what? I'm too young to be in an office for the rest of my life. I still want to experience and be outside. So I decided to pivot into a role that allowed me to do that. Play outdoors.
Okay. And did you always have an interest in, even going back further, did you always have an interest in business? You found your way there. Did you have this, was it back in your background already that you had an appreciation at least for kind of landscaping and design and the idea of the great outdoors? Just connect those dots for me.
Connect the dots. I grew up on a farm. And as a Canadian farmer who watched his family struggle from paycheck to season to crop to boom to bust, decided that was the last thing I wanted to do with my life. I valued money and the things money gets you way more than I valued the hard work. So I thought, get the desk job, do something that you're good at. I loved the whole brand side of business and brand development. So it just felt like a natural position until I started doing it. And then I realized, you know what? I really do like being outside. I do like working with my hands, but it took me, that sort of I want to say, career detour to figure out where I was meant to be.
Interesting. All right. So you still do that today, right? You were just, when we were in the story talking about you're heading out on a tour. Talk a little bit about that just to bring us up to current events.
Well, I'm even going to connect a couple extra dots for you. So my first TV show was called Room to Grow, and they said to me, "Hey, Carson, we want to work on outdoors and create beautiful spaces, but we want it to be a show that advertisers want to participate in." And I said, "Oh, hey, brand, I can do that. Check the box." So I started connecting advertisers with the content really early on. 25 years ago, I would talk to the advertisers and the people that, were invested in the show and say, "Okay, what are the types of things that you're excited about? How can I show those in a way that I'm excited about so that my viewers would also feel the same way?" So I started to connect those dots. And out of that, I started to become brand ambassador for a lot of outdoor products and work with a lot of very large companies doing just that, connecting the dots.
So let's talk about this. I don't know. What do you call it? Another pivot? You have a store. What's the origin? Talk about. First of all, introduce the store and the concept, and then I want to get into the origin story and talk more about that. So tell people as if they were standing in the middle of Carson's what to expect and what that store looks like.
So my store is called Carson's Garden and Market. It's in Prince Edward County. I'm surrounded by wineries and breweries, and I focus on the things about gardening that I love. So all the best tools from around the world, plants, products, flowers, everything that brings me joy in the garden, I bring to my store because these are the things that motivate me. The concept of the store, though, was a little different. I'm actually related to some very famous HGTV couple. Sarah Baumler is my cousin, and Brian and I have had lots and lots and lots of conversations, and Scott McGilvery as well. So I've had the pleasure of kind of picking their brain as to how to, take your TV career and build a brand or build a concept out of it. When you see all their vacation rental shows, and they've really done that. They've taken TV and made it work for them. So I decided to do the same. I was at the time filming with Cityline, still doing media tours across Canada. And I said, if I'm going to be this gardening expert, why would I not want to share all the things I love with a client base and build a store around it? And that's what I did.
It's a little like I was in Waco, Texas a couple of months ago, and I went to the Magnolia area, and the Gaines have done that very, very well. I'm like kind of on steroids, of course, but I get where you're going. I guess in your old world, you'd almost call it some of this stuff as line extensions and some as new brands, right? From that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. The difference is, I said after 25 years on TV, I want to start, I don't want to use the word retirement because I'm way too young for that.
Yeah.
But I want to start changing my life and enjoying life a little bit better. Instead of driving the hustle, I thought, listen, I'm gonna get into this retail world, which I love as a consumer, and love the shopping experience and going into beautifully, curated collections and stores. I want to do that on my own definition of what that looks like for a Carson Arthur store.
Now, this, if I recollect correctly, that was 2019. When did you start thinking about that? How long was it before that spark of inspiration hit to when you opened the doors at your store?
Well, because I'm a garden guy on TV, my real sweet spot has always been in the summers. And because Canada has our lovely seasonality, during the winters, I didn't have much to do. So what I was doing was buying and selling houses and renovating them and flipping them, and kind of doing it as an aside, but something I enjoyed doing. So I decided that at the time with my partner, we were going to buy one more in the city. But the housing market in Toronto went so crazy at the time that there was really no room to be profitable in doing that. So we started looking outside of the city, and we discovered Prince Edward County. And I found a home that not only met all of our needs for the current status, but also as a retirement property had so much potential. And with the parcel of land the house had was also this acre and a half piece of vacant space that was perfectly suited for this little garden center. So this was about 14 years ago that we kind of looked at it. We bought, we moved, and I actually built the store. So I built my own store. Wow. Yeah. And then we got married in it. So
come on, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Maximized it. Thank
Now
you.
I've got listeners coast to coast, and even a few listeners around the world. Prince Edward County, so
Mhm.
geographically, kind of between Toronto and Ottawa, close to Kingston's on the wonderful, great Lake Ontario. But describe Prince Edward County to those who've never been. Like, how would you describe it to the rest of Canada who've never had the opportunity or the pleasure?
So Prince Edward County is basically an island in Lake Ontario. So it's sort of attached in a couple of bridges to the Belleville Kingston area. But what's really interesting about Prince Edward County is it's on limestone. It's a piece of land on a giant limestone deposit, and all the winemakers figured out that the minerality from the limestone actually grows fantastic grapes. So we're surrounded by wineries. I think there's 52 in the county right now. It's sort of a young area. We're really developing it, a lot of Pinot Noirs and whites and Chardonnays. But it attracted me because it's also very agricultural. So it's got the wineries, it's got still working farms. We've got people harvesting hay right now at this time of year. Like, it's got that very farm to table vibe. And what happened when we started moving in was a lot of chefs, high profile chefs. And I'm going to name drop like Jamie Kennedy. These chefs started moving in because of that farm to table, grow what you eat lifestyle. And that's really what Prince Edward County offers, is that kind of that quality of life that you just don't get in urban centers.
Well, and by the way, shout out to Domaine Darius, which is how I found you, by the way. I went to Domaine Darius, which has now become one of my favorite wineries locally, and looked across the street and say, hey, what's that place? So anyway, just connecting the dots there. I think that the interesting story about Peck, as we kind of locals, I guess, know it, is the economic change and what drove Peck. I grew up in Ottawa, so, places like Picton, these were drive-by places. Like, they struggled for decades, but then kind of like almost like Nashville and places like this, the cultural folks, live with chefs and people like yourself, started saying, hey, it's too expensive to live in Toronto. I'm going to look for something different. Does that sound familiar to you? Do you talk a lot of your fellow citizens about that kind of, I'm looking for something different, not just that kind of farm to table, but also, I can live here. I can afford a house here, and it's a pretty good place to live, and I can have a glass of wine. Does that connect for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the chefs and the people like myself. Art is so prevalent in this area, and any good representation of a community has a deep reservoir of artists, and that really drives the county. We have a fantastic art program. In fact, I was at an art show last night. It's a different cultural experience, but I always joke with people, and I said, I left the city because I didn't want to be in traffic. And I calculated how many hours a day I spent in traffic. And the worst traffic jam I've gotten in the county is I got stuck behind a combine for 20 minutes. So, it's just a different attitude. Yeah. But again, we made a list prior to moving here. What would be the things that we were giving up? And the only thing on the list was good sushi. So, I think we're doing okay.
I think you're doing okay. All right. So I'd encourage anybody listening, and if you're in the area, go to Peck. The whole region is fantastic and wonderful. So it's become a real favorite of mine. So let's get back to the store. So you've described kind of, I found your product, it really is a reflection of merchandising, because it feels like a reflection of you as I've gotten to know you even a little bit. Now, how do you do your sourcing? I'm kind of curious. Do you go to the trade shows? Do you go online to fair and kind of do some hunting there? Like, how do you make that merchandising strategy that's in your head come to life? And just talk about some of that pragmatic stuff for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned the trade shows, because we just recently did a big one, and it's very discouraging for me, to be honest with you. And I don't want any of my vendors to get upset by that, but the truth is, I'm unique. My business is a bit of a unique model. There are very few companies like me. I mean, the closest might be Lee Valley as far as assortment of products.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
thing. But again, they don't invest in the merchandising side. So their experience in their stores is very different than what I was trying to create. So for me, finding products and sourcing them has more to do with traveling. So I travel around the world. We did Floriade in Amsterdam a couple of years ago. We just did Ireland. I'm looking for products around the world in gardening communities and bringing them back. I bring back a ton of product from the UK, from the Royal Horticultural Society. So I'm looking at other regions that value gardening the same way I do and bring those products back into my
Mm.
store. A lot from Japan, believe it or not.
Oh,
The
interesting.
Japanese gardening products are fantastic.
And do you use an online site like Faire? Like I was on Faire last night, just looking up different stuff for barbecue. And the good news about it is you can find neat stuff. The not so good news about it is so can everybody else, right?
That's the one downside. And I do like Faire, and we will do small testers out of Faire. And I look for Canadian
Mm.
suppliers because I am trying to promote the shop local and to kind of live by, even though I'm bringing in products from around the world, I still want to have some local content. So I do use Faire. I do use a couple of others, Shopsio as well. I mean, they're fine, but like you said, there's nothing that makes you different if that's your main sourcing or
Yeah,
model.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I try and get out of that a little bit.
Well, let's turn our minds to you as a retailer. So you spent you've had it's not your first career change, but you spent now a bunch of years as a retailer. You opened in 2019, so then you got hit with COVID shortly thereafter. But what did you learn about being a retailer? You must have been surprised at some things and reassured at others. But yeah, what are the most surprising things you learned about being a retailer after opening your store?
Well, I did a lot of research before even going down the retail route. And I spent the time writing the business plan and going through the whole model and opening in 2019 and starting to see, the evolution of what I was trying to create, but keep going back to the business model and saying, okay, this is what my goal was. Does this fulfill my goal? And I kept using that as my blueprint. And then COVID hit.
Hmm.
And honestly, you want growth for your business, but when COVID hit, it
You
was
got to just survive.
completely
You just got to survive, right?
well, no, it was the opposite for us.
Oh,
And this is
really?
why it was shocking. And so many businesses had such a hard time during COVID. We had the opposite. Prince Edward County, because of its little kind of, I don't want to say bubble, but its own little ecosystem, we actually stayed green as far as people being able to shop and coming into stores and doing stuff. We had a lot more flexibility than the rest of the country because there really weren't any cases or active cases in our area. So everybody who would normally travel or spend money traveling all came to Prince Edward County. So we had a massive, massive explosion of tourism and infrastructure dollars, and it was absolutely insane. I couldn't hire or get enough people. I was constantly just trying to run to keep up. So I had a nice little growth happening in 2019, 2020, and then a spike in 2021. In fact, my sales almost doubled because
Wow.
luckily had so many TV opportunities. I got to talk about my store on Cityline and all the morning
Right.
shows that I was
Right.
doing in Ottawa and Toronto and Hamilton. So all these people were coming in because we became a destination.
Yeah.
So
Can't
it
get an
was,
airplane, so I'm going to drive to Peck. Right on. It's funny when you look at
that's
the
what
history of
happened.
it. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So I never got to find a rhythm. Like I got
Mm.
growth, and then we had this massive spike. And coming out of the spike, it just kept dropping and
Yeah.
dropping and dropping as
Right.
things normalized, as people started going to Europe again and started,
Right.
traveling into the U.S. Prince Edward County's tourism numbers dropped. So it was really interesting to go from such a peak, such a massive volume of sales to where we are today, which is the complete opposite of that.
I think there's a little bit of because this is if I think about the overall category of home improvement, which you're like a subsector. There was this great what I've described as the great buy forward. In other words, we all bought a lot of stuff for our homes because we were all spending so
Yeah.
much time there, and that stuff doesn't wear out overnight. And people are like, "That's good. I've been shot my brains out." Do you think that's part of it as well?
A little bit. Yeah, I do. If you're looking at, say, things like a barbecue or flower pots, again, though, where I was a little bit unique is I
The
spent
live
a
stuff,
lot of,
live stuff.
yeah, the live stuff, plant material. People went crazy for
Mm.
plants. It was this whole need to care for something. And millennials and Gen Z just went crazy for houseplants. And I still think that passion is still there. So it wasn't, I bought one or two and that's enough. It's I bought one and two, and now I want this one and I want that one. And homes became mini greenhouses full of plants. So that it was a bit different for me than say, I want a deck, I'm going to build a deck, and now that deck's going to last me 8 years. So I had a little bit slightly different, buying pattern in my store at that time.
Interesting. I love this conversation because I want to tap into, as you've gone on your journey, your entrepreneurial retail journey, if you had advice to, if you had, the various stakeholders, right? If you had local government or provincial or federal government officials, sitting around for a cup of coffee, or even the vendors or the bankers, what advice would you have from them based on what you've learned over the past number of years, that you say, listen, if you could do these one or two things better, more people like me would start more businesses like this, and we'd all have a better GDP in this country. What would you say?
Oh, no pressure on that comment.
No pressure there.
It's interesting that so much emphasis is put on small businesses, and the idea that small businesses are the backbone of our country, and everybody wants to cheer for the small business owner. However, so many small businesses fail that when it comes down to it, when you're year 2, year 3, year 4, and you're really at that crunch time of, is this going to succeed or is it not? That's the moment where things like financial institutions kind of back away from you, where government grant programs are focusing already on this younger demographic. So there's no grant money, there's nothing available. So you're cast out at that point of the nest and said, if you're going to survive, you're on your own. Good luck. And I'm in year 5 now, so we've hit our threshold of what I needed to accomplish to ensure that I'm going to be here in the long term. But even today, even going into renew a mortgage, the bank looks at me as a small business owner and they're like, nope, we don't want anything to do with you. We're not even going to touch you. So it's tricky to understand and to wrap your head around this idea that you're important, but you're only really important once you're successful. And until you hit that success period, then you're a threat or you're a risk. And it's that risk feeling that I wish all of those institutions would somehow, get past or start looking at the potential versus the risk. And I know that's hard to do, but that's really, as a small business owner, what I would want people to do with regards to how to help me move forward.
Great insight. Now, let me turn around a little bit different. So you lived your vision and you brought a store to life. There's probably a bunch of folks listening to this right now who are thinking about the same thing. What advice would you give to them? I mean, and I'll frame this in a kind of a 2 starts and 1 stop, 2 things they should start doing and 1 thing they should stop doing. Maybe you did it and it didn't work, or you see other folks doing it and it's not going to work. What's your advice based on these 5 years of experience or longer, because you envisioned it for longer, about people who were in your place in 2015 or before 2019?
Okay, so 2 starts. The first one is going to go back to Procter Gamble. Invest in your base. Find who your customer is and invest in that base, because that base is what's going to get you through the tough times. That base is the ones that are going to communicate with you the things that they're looking for you to carry. So the more you invest and the time you spend on that customer, the better you're going to be in your own marketplace. The second thing is, do not overlook the community that you're part of. So if you're in a small town or even a medium big town, be a part of it. Act the expert, be part of community events and affairs, because like-minded businesses partnering together are so much stronger. You are not an island unto yourself. Partner with all these other businesses. Anybody who is going to be successful knows the best way to do it is to really leverage all of the other opportunities that are around you. And the more you can do that, the better you're going to be. And the one thing to avoid, do not wear the rose-colored glasses. We all have this great passion and we have this perfect vision of how it's all going to work out, and the fairy tale ending, and woohoo, I'm on my own and I'm a business and I'm paying for myself. But at the end of the day, plan for the downside, because it's not the ride up that causes the problems. It's when it's coming down, how you survive downturns in the economy. And everybody knows the economy is cyclical. It's going to go up and down. That is the nature of what we live in a consumerism society. So plan for the negatives, hope that they never happen, but have a plan in place for it. Do not just focus on the positives, because that is a trap that people fall into way too quickly.
All right. What's next for Carson's Garden and Market? Talk about what's next for the store.
Well, we're really growing. So the one thing that I realized fairly quickly on is I wanted to focus on this kitchen garden concept, this idea that food prices continue to rise across the country and globally. And more people are getting away from this landscaped, manicured backyard and starting to incorporate things like fruit trees and plants that grow vegetables or plants that grow food. Ornamentals, yeah, edible ornamentals, that's the term. So I started focusing on that and started saying to people, look at your outdoor spaces as an opportunity to provide food for your family. They can still be beautiful. Let me help you create the harmony between growing vegetables and having a beautiful space. And that's where I'm going to continue to put focus. A lot of emphasis on the teaching, the educating, and the caring for plants that give back to us versus plants that just look pretty outside.
If folks want to get in touch with you, maybe they got something they think would fit perfectly in the store, maybe perhaps they could learn something or they have something to share. Are you a LinkedIn person? And how do they best get in touch?
Yeah, as you know, because of the TV side of things, I have to be everywhere all the time. So you pick a social platform and I'm probably somewhere on it. I mean, worst case scenario, Google it because I'm around.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, listen, Carson, thanks for taking the time and joining me on the mic. I mean, it was we met a couple of weeks ago, and here we are chitting and chatting. So thanks for sharing your wisdom and insights and experience with my audience and joining me on the mic and the Voice of Retail podcast. And it was a real treat. I hope you have continued success and safe travels for all the things you're doing in the fall, and I look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thank you, Michael. It was my absolute pleasure. And if one business does better because of what they heard today, then my job was done.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.